Hello, everybody. You're ready for the great suffering ahead. This is Catholic Dad, episode number 365. And so we're in the middle of a pandemic, the corona pandemic, one of the worst pandemics in the last 100 years. Not really. We don't know how the numbers are going to shake out. And really, it doesn't appear as if the seasonal death rate is going to be that much higher across the entire country and perhaps the whole world than a seasonal typical flu season. Perhaps pockets like New York and northern Italy, maybe, but the remainder of the countries are experiencing far less deaths than typical this time of year. But are you ready for the great suffering ahead? We may have averted a corona crisis. It's possible. Nobody really knows. The data's not in yet. But the other data that's coming in will be difficult because what we just did is we just popped a debt supercycle bubble is what we did. And there's no getting out of this sucker. Once the air starts coming out of the bubble, there's no reinflating the bubble. And when that money starts chasing less and less goods and services and more money is being printed to try to service the debt super bubble, that's called hyperinflation. It's, I suspect, I've always thought inflation is occurring because it is occurring. We're expanding the money supply all the time. When my dad was a cop back in 1969 with the NYPD, his yearly salary was $5,800, and he could actually support a family on that. Today, you can't even pay for gas to commute to New York City for $5,800. Therefore, inflation is happening. But once you start printing more money to try to chase a pop debt bubble, you're going to create rampant inflation and you're going to create hyperinflation. And so the great suffering that is coming to a store near you or a theater near you is quite great. Because what you've seen is that the food supplies are already getting disrupted. Kill plants are being shut down because of the pandemic. The big box stores don't have meat processing abilities right now, and therefore the meat supplies are growing short. And oh, by the way, they're slaughtering hogs by the thousands because the supply chain that we've relied upon for so long is now being disrupted. Are you ready for the great suffering? Because once people get hungry, then they get desperate. Once they get desperate, they migrate. And once they migrate, then xenophobia occurs, crime, clashes, all the other stuff. In addition, when people get desperate, they don't look for freedom and liberty and they don't look into their communities, but they look for a strong man. And that's what we're going to see in this world. A strong man will step up and a great catastrophe could happen. We could have a great war or something like that. But this coming pandemic is going to create an economic depression, probably one that we've never seen in the history of our country. The Great Depression will probably look like a walk in the park. And there may actually be hunger in developed nations, which is astounding to me. I don't know. I don't know this for a fact. But here's the deal. It seems like the big corporations that are in charge of the American economy, which they are, it used to be the people at one point in time, but now it's large corporations, and they're manipulating federal law to get their way through regulation. Well, big pharmaceutical is perhaps one of the most evil branches of corporate fascism in the world today, and they've already honed in on the American people and the world for that matter, that they're going to create all these drugs they're going to force down American people's throats. Problem is this, like vaccinations, this vaccine will probably harbor stem cells, right? Stem cells from aborted fetuses. We as Catholics probably are obliged not to accept it. That would be my guess. But the bottom line is the state won't stop at that. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come in and try to coerce you in every way possible by ripping away your rights and your freedoms and your liberties. Kids can't go to school. You can't work in certain organizations. I work in a hospital, by the way. And I know the big corporations that run the hospital systems now will try to hand down these edicts and state that you won't be able to keep your job if you don't take their vaccines. The problem with this is there's actually components of moral conscience that we actually have to stand up and do what we think's right. We can't do evil even when under duress. And so, well, anyway, so religious persecution's coming, probably some famines coming. When famine occurs, people die at higher rates just from malnutrition because, like the flu, if you threw the flu virus or any old virus for that matter, COVID-19, I don't even know, you throw a COVID virus into a well-fed population, they actually do reasonably well. But you throw a COVID virus or measles virus or any virus for that matter into a malnourished population, they do exquisitely unwell. They'll die very quickly. Probably the reason why the Native American had so many problems with smallpox. Like the Europeans did reasonably well with it for the most part, but then they brought it over and almost wiped out the American Indian population. And so Well, anyway, there's suffering coming, and you better be ready for it. And so, what can you do to prepare yourself? And I don't really know. You know, you got to live your sacramental life, and you got to get your soul in line with God. You got to be in a state of grace. That's for sure what you got to do. But what can you do in a pragmatic sense? And this is my advice to you as Catholic dad: start buying local. Get out of the big box stores. Start getting from your local farmer. Start keeping those food supply chains open. If you start paying farmers slightly more than Walmart or whatever it is, or even slightly more than Walmart, it's going to create supply chains that will exist for your society when the grid goes down or whatever happens. I mean, all you need is some kind of riot in a city somewhere, and suddenly food trucks can't get in, and then all of a sudden the supply chains are completely cut off. And so it may be coming. It may be coming quickly, but the thing is this: all 50 states have agriculture. They do. And so if all 50 states have agricultures, go buy a side of beef at your local farmer and bring it to a local butcher. That's what you do. And oh, by the way, that's a supply chain you can create for yourself. And then the guy that puts the cow down gets some food. By the butcher gets some money. They get some money. And then the guy that kills the cow gets some money. And then you get some food. And then your supply chains stay open. Like in times of crisis, it's great. By the way, when you're not in time of crisis, this whole global economy appeared to be working really, really well. People were uber employed. Everybody had too much money, too much materialism. But when times of crisis occur, you don't want a global economy, and you have to rely upon people far, far away for your food and the necessities of your life. Use local businessmen, use local farmers, use local agriculture. Do it, and that will shore up your future. It really will. So anyway, this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. Please like or subscribe. Get the Mass, pray the daily rosary, and get the confession. Okay, God bless you all.